I'm done with the budget. On that note, and I'm now wanting to just summarize the reasons, but by going back to the one where I put a comma. The group of people that wanted private conversations and others sent WhatsApps and so on, and who expressed concerns about their security and all of that, and who I said what they were saying to me, I took the decision that whenever there's an opportunity, which I didn't think at that time, I didn't know what mechanism we would need to follow, I decided and accepted that their safety would almost be in my hands, because if I go and say so and so and so and so I said 1, 2, 3, it wouldn't augur well on their part. And this influenced me not to go to the National Commissioner as I would have done with other grievances and other complaints, because there was now security. It had nothing to do with trusting or not trusting the National Commissioner. Even the DMs, I didn't go to them to say there is this, but this process of thinking what mechanism the engagement would take, especially on this particular aspect, it took me really some time to settle with something that is balanced, that I was happy with. Now, let me divulge though how I had when finally in those in that last day of the year, I decided to write the letter. First thing, I calculated months I'd been appointed to police. It was 5 months at that time. And when I looked at our performance, I was happy with our performance and in terms of progress that we had made. But it didn't meet my standards, I must admit, it didn't. So I thought we would have done more in terms of progress on all the difficulties that we were coming across, and make subs work better, especially if calculated from one imperative of this 7th administration: make people feel secure in the country. So I felt that we were lagging behind and there was a gap. So I then said, no, I'm not going to, I'm going to, this was a decision that I had been nursing, but without settling for it, deciding that I'm settling. Now, when we broke after the 28th, we only stopped working on the 28th of December. I had time to sit. I went to my home in where I grew up in the rural area. Some of the rural areas like mine, they are open, really rural, and you think better when you are there. Some of you who come from those areas that are open, I see Honorable Mngangwe smiling. He knows processing. I then got time to think in a concentrated way, 29, 30, because I must be honest, it didn't, even on those days, I had not settled to it. No, I must write a directive. But because I put myself under pressure to really come to the conclusion of my thinking process, there was also an intervention that at the beginning of the year when we open, what is it that we will be upfront in terms of dealing with and delivering. And so early in the morning on the 31st, I woke up, I took the pen. In my home where I sleep when I'm there is a rendezvous. So I went there to sit on the table and started writing. Now, firstly, when General Mkhwanazi even took pain trying to explain that my letter was written by people who were sitting somewhere in a corner, I was looking at him on TV. I did see that he really was trying very hard to find a corner somewhere in South Africa where these people were sitting, who he didn't name. And he ended up not naming that place. What the truth is, I sat down in that room alone, and I wrote what ended up being the directives. Why did I select the three? They came from the work that we had been doing, and in my assessment, they came up tops as uppermost in my mind, also considering the views of people. Now, which are these issues? It is the disbandment of the political task team, merely as part of, not that I have any particular individual in the team that I have a problem with, but it was optimization. I will get resources and so on, more resources to do what we have to do in advancing the work. And my calculation was that it would be a process that at some point we would discuss in a particular way. So I then said, okay, political killings task team, we would need to disband it. 2, it is the border management, because we have, as leadership, whether here in Parliament or in the executive, some instances you really can't, you feel you can't explain. Like when a young 6-year-old girl, among other matters, was murdered in Soweto. And it turned out that she had been murdered by a foreigner, somebody from outside, from Mozambique. And when you looked at that person and the age of the child, and the atrocity, the manner, the cruelty that went into the murdering of that child, I really felt embarrassed. And it was one of the things that I recorded. That maybe if I had taken some steps to reduce the inflow in borders by making sure that we play our role, an efficient role, as subs among other people who are on the border, we could have saved the life of the child. That came to me. Then I then wrote border management. But by then, I had become aware that, in fact, the exit and entrance points in South Africa are porous. Those people who are criticizing us for not taking these matters up the way we should as government over time are correct, and I support them. Therefore, border management came as a result. It has matters inside. I come from KZN, northern part of KZN. I often speak to people in Manguzi and so on. And those people live in fear, literal fear of losing their cars, losing themselves, and all of that. In other words, being victims of these people who are maranguing in that particular area. And murders have taken place by these people and so on. And so I identified that as the second thing that I would want to tackle very early at the beginning of the year. And then the third one was freezing posts in crime intelligence. Now, let me then wrap up on the, as I say, on the political killings, Tassim, why I then did it the way I did it. I've indicated that the prime issue was, how do I disclose if I phone the National Commissioner, if I talk to the National Commissioner and all the other people who are managing the political killings task team, but him in particular, or deputy ministers or deputy ministers. I felt that, let me reduce the risk to myself of these people and nevertheless take the decision while mitigating the exposure and the risk on the side of these people. Then I wrote political killings team, and so it's a decision I took, and I'm responsible for it, and I stand by it. That I will deal, of course, with the constitutionality and lawfulness thereof, but in terms of reaching that decision and writing it, if there's one person to talk about on it, it's me. Let's not look for some people who are in the corner. In the writing and transmitting my decision, there are only 3 people who were involved. One, it was the chief of staff in my office, because I didn't want to personalize it to a point where I simply write from home and it ends like, I wanted the office to house it, to host it, but we're not together with the chief of staff. So I said, here is the letter. Send it to the special advisor, Advocate Piccoli, who was in Pretoria, and the letter was sent to him. And he looked at it, he made some inputs. It went back to chief of staff with those corrections. He sent them to me, I read it, and I said, go ahead. That's the process. So don't look any further for any reason, even if you somehow believe that I have no capacity to write that letter for some reason. I don't think that there is any engineering of anything in that. It merely were the selection of issues I felt strong about, but not on behalf of myself, but flowing from the work that is expected of me to deal with and have and make impact in terms of the work that I do. And it was not the first letter that I wrote ever in life. I'm not talking about letters of love affairs as a schoolboy. I wrote plenty of those letters. I'm talking serious work. I've done so in my job. I'm not saying so, honorable member. It really was not the first letter, and I don't think it is the last letter. Just a letter to write related to work. That's why I'm saying I'm taking personal responsibility of that letter, and I stand by it. Now, with identifying those 3 matters, but the reason why I couldn't call General Masimula, called General Mkhwanazi, called General Khumalo to my home or elsewhere, is because the finality of engaging on that matter came in that particular form, in the last days of the year. So if you ask me, why not when we were together, I had not concluded. I'm honest about it. I make an effort to be honest all the time. I may not reach highest levels, but I always try to make to be honest. There was no one, and I would want even the ad hoc committee, if you want, to take the gadget that I used, if they will not have taken it, to go and search whether that doesn't originate from there and I trust technology, it can do, I'll hand it over to the ad hoc committee. You will never find it having originated anywhere else. It originated from, and I was sitting alone at home. But there were other people like my wife, they were there, my children were there. I'm not meaning. But when I wrote, it was written by me, it was sent and to two other people. So don't be under any illusion, no matter how serious it is said, no matter who says so, it was written by me, that letter. So the reason why I couldn't consult, it was because of, in the main, the circumstances for that group of people. I've gone on the group of people to engage evidence leader to explain the situation and said, I wouldn't want to talk on behalf of anybody, of any one of them. I would want the ad hoc committee to make means for them to come and give evidence, their own evidence. As they said to me, if they were lying to me, they will lie to you as well. I want them live I want them to say these things live to you. That's why I didn't, there was no such a platform when I wrote, but nevertheless, I said to myself, I would have to do something. Indeed, at the beginning of the year, I had a discussion with Advocate Picold to say, should we come up with an inquiry at ministerial level, just for these people to get a fair platform where they will feel safe and confident, because we can't just treat a risk of life, and this is a security thing, and say people must go and talk anyhow, anywhere, and so on. Because they themselves said so to me. Please look after ourselves. We trust you. We are talking about these things as they are. We have experienced these things firsthand in these two categories that I said, human resource practices and others that border, if not exactly, on defeating the ends of justice. And the names of people there. And I have responsibility to protect those individuals. That's why we went elaborate to say what would be the nature of transporting them as individuals. Where will they be accommodated? And how will they come here? And there must be somebody who lead each one of them on writing a statement to the ad hoc committee. We can't just leave it to them. They need to be assisted in terms of how to compile a statement to the ad hoc committee. So that is the reason, those are the reasons why I didn't convene anyone to talk about disbandment. But it is not proper to say there was no one else who was involved in processing all these things that I've spoken about as reasons. For instance, the budget. I'm not the only person in SAPS who knows that our budget is thinned up. I'm not. Even National Commission's accounting officer knows. He knows that on several occasions I said something needs to be done. I even contemplated going to Minister of Finance, but he's my colleague, I know. He would have said, Minister, there's no money. And I know that President and Treasury have set up a mechanism to visit all of us as ministers to check if we are optimizing our budgets. So I started the process on my own to optimize and so on. So the space in which we're operating is defined like that, and I'm honest in saying it was like that. But let me come to legality and constitutionality thereof, because it's one thing. When I came to that, when you write a directive, the difference between other directives is that other directives you would say when you are in a meeting and so on, but there's directives. Let me make an example. They want to disband the police inspectorate. We were in a meeting, and I said, just brief me what these people do. We were in a meeting. Then they said they do 1, 2, 3, how many, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Then I said, what would happen to SAPS if we were to do away with the police inspectorate? And they said they don't think there will be anything that will happen. We're in a meeting. Not that I called the commander of the inspectorate or whoever. We were just in a meeting, normal meeting. And they said, in principle, we agree. And then they went to do that. Now, decisions in the ministry and management, I have directed that they would be taken at MINESCO, that is minister, plus top management meetings, we call them MINESCO. These are key decisions in the department, so that they are not taken by ministry alone, they are not taken by management alone. We take them together. That's why in the directive, the only thing that was there is one of the things that was there, indication that we will still go there and discuss the matter. But let me discuss the constitutionality. Chair, with all honesty, I believe very strongly that the Constitution of the Republic allows the minister, or that the minister has power to take the decision that I took in relation to directives, all three of them. I start with section 206, subsection 1, which addresses the political responsibility for the police service. It states, I quote, a member of the cabinet must be responsible for policy and must determine national policing policy after consulting the provincial governments and taking into account the policing needs and priorities of the provinces as determined by the provincial executive. This is what it says. You may have heard one of the generals in the Madlanga Commission saying the policing policy that has been endorsed and is in operation is the first one since 2018 to be, or if not since whatever period, I think she was saying 1994 or something like that. So that policing policy, we developed it, it is in place, in line with this duty. But as it says here, you determine, taking account. That's one. 207, it deals with a different matter. The control of the police service. Now, it reads as follows. The president, as head of the national executive, must appoint a woman and a man as the National Commissioner of Police Service to control and manage. Yes, I was looking for manage. Control and manage the police service. And subsection 2 says, the National Commissioner must exercise control over and manage the police service in accordance with the national policing policy and the directions of the cabinet member responsible for policing. So there is me sitting down, writing what I believed to be directives, 3 of them, in line with these powers, and sending them to National Commissioner, who I know is responsible for management and control of police. It deals with that. So I write to a directive. There's a further section, 208, which governs the civilian secretariat, the establishment thereof, and so on. So in a nutshell, and I know it's easy because I'm talking to colleagues in Parliament who make laws, and they are clear about this. So minister has three powers, broadly speaking, in summary: determine national policing policy, direct the national commissioner when exercising his or her powers of managing and controlling, and three, direct the civilian secretariat, which must be established by national legislation. The Constitution, which is my next point, does not prescribe the content of the national policing policy beyond saying, go to the provinces, check what their needs are, and determine accordingly. This is left to the minister, except that particular prescript, which you can't do away with, you can't do without, of consulting provinces. However, the policy must take into account, yes, as I say, the Constitution contemplates an all-encompassing policy which sets the framework for the operations of the policy for the police. Once determined, the police must operate within the contours of such a framework. So minister is given a role, there's no doubt about that. It's given a role. It's not something that I crafted myself. You are given by the Constitution to say when the national commissioner exercising control and management, it must be within the contours of your determinations and of your directives. Which directives must be there and must be given? Not when they are not given, when they are given. So I did that. And I believe I'm here to learn how would I have given these directives outside the Constitution, as some people believe. So the Constitution and the SAPS Act envisage that the policy and directions will be enforceable. Hence, the civilian secretariat to evaluate and monitor implementation. That's why the statute therefore assigns the institution of the special function to monitor their implementation, which is an institution, the secretariat. Now, the nature of the direction that minister may issue to the national commissioner is not specified. It doesn't have color. It doesn't say it's only this direction that you will give. It is red or it's green or it is gold. It is not. It says you will give directives. And I wrote directives and I gave them. It's not specified in the Constitution. However, regard must be had to the language of Section 207 and 2. I acknowledge that, which imposes a limitation in the exercise of that constitutional imperative. So in other words, you can't just give any directive. It must be as the Constitution says. The provisions empower the national, because these provisions, 207, 1 and 2, empower the National Commissioner to manage and control the service. There's clearly an operational power over service. However, the operational power is constrained by 207.2. So the minister has his own areas of exercising power in terms of the Constitution. The National Commissioner has his own, and they are written down in black and white. But each one is limited by the other. Each one is limited by the other. It's not a free zone. Now, when I elaborate on my own, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been minister in other departments. I do say, in reality, this is two sides of the same coin. The relationship, the power relations between a minister and a director general. Because you can have your powers of determining policy, of giving directions. But if the director general or national commissioner is not there and it doesn't cooperate as the other side of the same coin, you won't go anywhere. Similarly, national commissioner can't just do outside of the directives, outside of the policing police. So this is a compelling kind of issue or exercise of power relations between the two. Let me go on with the powers. So I believe, honestly believe that I didn't exceed the powers of the minister in writing those directives, nor did I exceed the powers of the Constitution and even the Act, the SAPS Act. Now, the issue of time, I'm just taking leisure to deal with. I attached immediately. Now, the directive would still have been the directive even without immediately, but I added immediately because, as I indicate, I wanted to send a message to be understood that I would want the national commissioner to have this in mind, but it was not like in a drill. You know, in a drill, you say left, and the person you are commanding must really lift the left leg, as and when you say, on time. Left, you say right, they must take right up. You shout another instruction. You turn left, they do this. Turn right, they do so. Aim, you aim, all of you. It's an instruction that. But the context of these instructions that come from a minister and these ones that came from are not the same as those in a drill. And it's always like that. Not in the form of a drill. It wouldn't mean that when the national commissioner receives the directive, he has to do this on the spot. That is why I gave a window. It was deliberate. Go and try and write an interim report. An interim report. I didn't say immediately and within 1 hour. Write an interim report. It didn't. It says on the 20th.
Okay, Minister. There are honorable members that are raising hand. I wanted you to explain that part so that your chain of thought is not disrupted. That is why I kept them waiting for some time. Honorable Nomvalo, Honorable Skosana.
Yeah, Chair. No, we wanted to be reminded of a question to which the minister is responding, because it must not appear as though he's addressing us. The evidence leader has been quiet for quite some time, and the minister has addressed various aspects of his evidence. He has addressed the reasons, he has addressed the constitutionality of his reasons, and the evidence leader has just kept quiet. So as he continues to ask the minister, we are following also. That is why we also peruse the documents. So he shouldn't address for a very long time without getting proper guidance in terms of the questions that must be posed to him. So which question is the minister answering?
Honorable Skosan.
Thank you, Chair. I was raising that as well to say, you know, it's unfortunate that the minister indeed is addressing us, and not the question which the evidence leader was asking. But indeed, it's been now almost 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And I'm not sure whether this is how this witness is going to present to us, because the evidence leader so far has been quiet. It might go up to an hour if we are not careful, Chair. Thank you.
Honorable Malem.
Chair, I see nothing wrong with what the minister is doing. He has been asked the question, and before we went for comfort break, minister said something that has been haunting him from the 6th of July. All we can do is to listen to him. It's our job to listen. And at an appropriate moment, when he's done, the evidence leaders will ask those questions if they have them. Minister must be considerate of the fact that there is not unlimited time. But it can't be us who are going to stop a minister who wants to share as much as he can with us. And we are going to have an opportunity to ask questions and direct him to where he wants to go. But to stop him as if he has done something wrong, especially after he pleaded with you before when he thought we were breaking, that he's got issues, he has been sitting with them, and this is an opportunity for him to ventilate those issues. So I think we're all in order here. If people are sleeping, it's not our problem.
Honorable members, let me do this. I'm noting your hands. May I allow the minister to finish presenting the reasons that he said he wanted? These are the reasons behind the decisions that he has taken. So if you have any question for clarity, you can raise a hand and be clarified on whatever he's saying. But he requested, even before we took comfort break, that I want to be given time to conclude. And I remember it was me who even asked him, how much time do you need? And when we came back from break, I checked with the senior counsel, and the signal that I got from him was that let's allow the minister to make a presentation. Honorable Nomvalo and Honorable Ngola, Chief Whip. Yes.
No, Chair.
No, I can see your hands are.
We're actually not going to enter.
Are persistent.
We will not go.
I can't ignore you.
Yes. We're not going to enter the realm of labeling people, accusing them of sleeping and so on.
Let's focus.
What we are raising here, yes, I'm focusing there, Chair. What we are raising here, Chair, is that we're not stopping the minister. We want to follow him.
Yeah.
But we're not only following him. We are following questions and answers that are given to questions. The minister has addressed various aspects. Now, we want to be reminded, and it's our right as members of this committee. No one has dominance and monopoly of speaking here. We're going to speak as members of this committee, whether people like it or not. Now, what we want guidance on is a question to which the minister is responding, because he has given different dimensions. And we have even forgotten the question that was asked from him, because we're also following, Chair. We want to also make a determination of whether the minister is responding correctly to questions or not. So let's not be bullied here, please.
Honorable Ngola.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, you'll recall that when we came back from the break, the issue at hand that was placed before the minister by the evidence leaders was the issue relating to the power dynamics, power relations, between who has more power between the National Commissioner and the Minister for a dissolution. The minister is on record saying, let me take the ad hoc committee through the constitutionality of my decision. And he has went to section 206 of the Constitution, went to section 207 of the Constitution. So he's addressing that currently. I think we're still on track in terms of what the evidence leader has asked and what the minister is addressing. Thank you very much, Chair.
Chief Whip.
No, Chair, I'm largely covered by what Honorable Ngola is saying, but I think we should distinguish between the intervention of Honorable Nomvalo from the one of Honorable Skhosana. I think Honorable Nomvalo is making a plea that should have been handled without really opening a long conversation, because all he's inquiring about which questions was the minister dealing with, and even you, Chair, you could have intervened to say, no, he's dealing with this and the matter is closed. The problem is the intervention by Honorable Skhosana, in which he is then arguing that the time spent given to the minister is equivalent to an address. And so the intervention by Honorable Malema arises from that problem. Actually, the first question, I thought there was nothing untoward about the question. The problem was the intervention to suggest that the length of the response is equivalent to an address. So that's what I wanted to say, Chair. Thanks.
Honorable Malema.
No, Chair, as long as you press a mic here and speak, we're going to respond to you. And don't say we. If you've got a concentration problem, it's not a collective problem. Don't make it our problem. So you are not going to say, no one is going to dominate us here, thinking you're going to speak and speak things we won't respond to. We're going to respond to. If you are challenged and the mind is feeling pain now, it's none of our problem. If your party send people with weak minds and concentration span, it's the party's problem. It's not our problem. Listen, the minister's talking now.
No, let me rule you out.
No, Chair, no, let's address that behavior.
No,
Let's address that behavior.
I'm ruling.
No, let's address that hooliganism. Let's address that hooliganism.
I'm ruling the statement.
No, let's address that hooliganism, Chair.
Yeah, but
let's address that hooliganism.
Let me speak.
Let's address that hooliganism. Yeah. We're not scared of the man.
Yeah,
we can address him.
Honorable Nomvalo.
If we are scared of him, we're not scared of him.
Honorable Nomvalo.
Let's address him.
Honorable Nomvalo. There is no way I will not allow you to speak. I'm ruling that statement out of order. It's what I'm saying. It does not belong here. It's unfortunate that it has to be made, and I'm ruling it out. So now I give you a chance to speak.
I withdraw, Chair.
You have made a progressive ruling, Chair. Thank you very much. That's why we have confidence in you.
So, relax, Minister. No. Wait. Honorable members, can I check if there is still anyone amongst you who wants to say something? Okay. The people who are operating the cameras of Parliament, because when we ask the minister questions, he may take some time to respond. In our meetings, what we normally do, we rotate speakers. So if you can also rotate the camera so that it does not always focus on the minister, I think it's...
Are you saying, Chair, the minister will abantu?
It will help us because, you know, when we go for a long time without members being rotated on the camera, I'm just saying that the camera must also have a fair coverage of the members so that they don't become impatient. And Minister, we are back from the ad break.
No, Chair, I think I thought the intervention made by Honorable Mchunu, politely so, with a high level of maturity, is going to assist us. The intention was to get which question is the minister responding to for the purposes of our records, nothing else. If you can remind, you can do it by yourself, Chair.
No, that point is covered. Everybody agrees with it.
And then which question, if you can remind us a question to which what he is responding.
So you want the senior counsel to restate the question. I thought that what the honorable members, the three of them, Honorable Ngola, Honorable Malema, and Honorable Ntul, have sufficiently explained the question that the minister was addressing. In fact, you were right when you asked, because you wanted to have a proper understanding of what the minister was doing. And I think the honorable members have assisted to bring you on board. And so let's allow the minister to continue presenting the reasons that he wants us to understand from the logic behind the decision that he has taken. Is that proper, Minister? I want to apologize if your chain of thought would have been distracted.
No, I'm fine. That's proper.
Thank you so much.
Chair, in case anyone needs help, I'm here.
But you are advertising that brand. Can we continue?
Thank you very much, Chair. It's my belief and my submission that
my benevolence is infectious.
That the National Political Task Team was not established by the National Commissioner. It's my belief. And I've done the best that I could to think through, and I'm convinced that there's no National Commissioner who, after the matter of Mr. Mchunu, went to establish the task team. It was the president who went there. And it was executive or political intervention. And then he gave birth to something that was not there, the IMC. When they meet, they then say there must be this further mechanism called, of course, with the then National Commission and other officers. But the directive came from a political setup via the intervention, and the human beings that are there were the executive, several ministers at the instance of the president. So they then say, do 1, 2, 3. And then it gets done and so on. It was not, for instance, 702, the minister using his powers in the office, which are there to say, let me establish this. When those who were acting to craft this, when they were doing it at the instance of political intervention. They were doing it, and there's nothing bad about that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It was necessary, and it happened. So I contest very honestly, but strongly, a view that says that we have the National Political Killings Task Team because General Stoll at that time went to think hard about it, and he came up with the idea. He only facilitated it after he was directed to do that. He was directed through a political intervention. Now, if a political intervention can establish a task team, why can't the same political intervention be allowed when it comes to disestablishing the political killings task team? It can. because you can't on one hand create something and then you are told you can't. The president appoints a minister, for instance, with due powers given to him. When he wants to disappoint you, he can't be told by somebody you needed to have consulted the fellow and so on. He disappoints you. He just makes a statement, you are no longer a minister. And in some cases, at some point, you would just have a press briefing elsewhere without even telling the fellow. And then the fellow will see how. There's a new one. So that which was born through political intervention can be unborn, can be disestablished via. It's one thing to disagree, but that disagreement must not, people can always refer because it's an argument, but I believe that I didn't act outside the Constitution and outside legislation for the reasons that I've given. And that at the center of it, it was not the National Commissioner who established this. He was directed to do it by a political intervention emanating from the president. And this is what I believe actually happened. Let me go on. And I believe that the decision to disband the PKT, as I've said, was for lawful reasons. It was not for unlawful reasons. Not at all. Well, I know that when General Mchunu made a statement, among other things, the accusation was that I disbanded this because I wanted to protect criminal syndicates. I want criminal syndicates. I wonder. But not that I wanted to protect them. And I will say how I have demonstrated in the past that I wonder. So it was for lawful reasons, not for unlawful reasons. And it didn't come from anyone else. It came from me as Minister of Police. And I have capacity to think to that level in my role. I may be wrong, I may be right, but the decision was not for unlawful reasons. As a matter of fact, I have nothing to do with criminal syndicates myself. I've never had anything to do with them in my life. Not once. And not Amber. Not Amber. It has never happened. And it will never happen. It will never happen. Well, accusation is another when I'm accused, but I know I'm being investigated. But I know that at the same time, statements have been made in this comment that I'm no criminal. General Mchunu knows in his conscience that I'm not a criminal, that I have nothing to do with criminal syndicates. He knows. Now, let me go on. So it was not for criminal reasons. Now, I may as well add, the crimes that are being associated or lined up with the decision, those activities on those alleged criminals took place long before General Mchunu deployed 10 people there for whatever reason. These people were investigated and so on, and whatever happened, because the 10 members did not start from scratch on those Gauteng cases. They didn't. They were already being investigated. So it would mean police in Gauteng must then say, I intervened because they were investigating. How so? And as a matter of fact, I didn't know that on the 6th there was whatever when I took the decision on the, because even if General Masimula comes to you and say, I'm going to, we are investigating so and so, you don't memorize that and say, yeah, he is pursuing so and so. You don't. You just say thank you. But in 2 hours, in a day or two, you may forget that he told you that he was pursuing. That is why, even following the arrest of Mlife, for whatever reason, National Commissioner told me, actually, that it is something that has to do with Mlife, who is a member of parliament. That is the briefing that. So when, after the arrest, and I didn't see the arrested person linked with the member of parliament, I phoned National Commission to say,
Minister, did you say Molefe, who is a member of parliament?
I happen to know that there is an honorable member called Brian Mlife. And that is what, that is what National Commissioner indicated to me, as a matter of fact. But after the arrest, when I didn't see Brian from news, I saw I phoned National Commissioner and I said, you seem to have, is it? And then he said, no, it's a relative of. So I now say, why do I stand accused for somebody who was not even the person who was supposed in the arrest? It went to somebody else. Why? How did I know Brian Mlife? And that he is, it was the first time when I saw his arrest that he's there and so on. So let me leave that subject. Then we go to another.
Sorry, Minister. Honorable Chair, can I just check with the Minister whether he's now been through discussed all his reasons and the legality / constitutionality of his directive, so that we can be confined to that topic, because that's what the Minister requested. He wants a full opportunity to speak to the nation and to give his side of the stories. So just in case, because I've obviously got a number of questions relating to your reasons, and would like to ask you those questions. But
I'm on the last one.
Yeah, okay.
In my submission is 29. General Masimula stated under oath in his application proceedings between SAPS and Lieutenant General Sibia, and I quote what he said under oath: accepted that the directive, that is of the minister, fell within the oversight powers of the minister. It's not me saying that. It's a statement of the National Commissioner under oath. But I held the view as National Commissioner that his insistence on how and when the task team be deactivated, overreached into constitutional mandate as the National Commissioner of Police to manage and supervise. That is what National Commissioner is saying. So on the constitutionality, he himself is clear. He accepts, and I'm quoting, I'm not writing it myself. And here's the problem with the how part, and the how part I would contest. I never gave him directives inclusive of the how part. I merely indicated immediately, meaning that the decision is immediate that I've taken, but I understand implementation via the interim. I even said there would be another meeting, the UNESCO, at some other point, meaning I was envisaging that there would be meetings, there would be discussions, and I wanted those discussions myself because of the belief I held even at that time that there is something wrong with the existence. It has nothing to do with good performance or what, but in the current situation where you have reviewed the organogram, you have done this and this, and you are thinking about the resources, thinking very hard about resources, you need to design things differently and so on. So General Masimula, there he is under oath, accepts that minister has oversight. In the paragraph of his answering affidavit, General Masimula seems to accept, therefore, my powers, not me personal, minister, to issue the directive. His reservation, it would seem, was about how and when the directive had to be implemented, which I have no problem with because the how part was never in the directive. It was just this word, immediate, which he understood differently from what I understood. And I've given reasons that I didn't use immediate in the context of a drill. I didn't. It's in the context of minister having taken a decision to indicate clearly, and then he moves on. Now, I want then to revert to the to evidence leader as per what you have just said, Chair, for now. Not that I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senior Counsel. You may proceed.
Thank you. Minister, thank you. I trust that you took full opportunity of conveying your own side of the story and giving your reasons and so on. Can we accept that while you were minister, before you were put on leave, that the political task team is still in existence and still operates in the way they have since 2018?
Well, as you say, I'm on leave, so I can't talk on behalf of what is happening or on what is happening.
But you also happen to be a citizen. You watch the news, you read the papers. The task team is still in existence. You know that, whether you're on leave or not.
No, I would repeat that I'm on leave, so I can't really say this is what is happening, this is what is not happening. There is a minister there who is acting, who has authority to do so, and we can't talk, both of us, on what is happening in SAPS while I'm on leave. It won't be proper.
Yes, but you were the minister when a submission was made that the task team's life be extended, and there was a decision by the National Commissioner that it be extended, and that it was funded, and we've seen the amount. It was part of your evidence. The National Commissioner approved an amount of 20 million. Whereas General Sabia had also requested funding for a disbanded task team where these tasks and these dockets would now be reallocated, for example, to murder and robbery, and that motivation was rejected. Are you not aware of that?
No, I'm aware of that information, but the question was, are you aware that they are operating? And I'm saying I can't commit on that, but what evidence leader is saying, it's here. I'm aware of it.
Well, I thought it was a pretty straightforward question. It's not a trick question. Whether you know that the task team is still in operation.
And I'm saying to the evidence leader, that question should be directed to the acting minister for authority and precision.
Okay, and what if I tell you it is still in operation?
Pardon?
What if I tell you it is still in operation?
I will take note. But it won't be said by me. It will be said by evidence.
So what is your reaction to them still being in operation? You just take note. You're not disappointed or anything?
No, this happened in the context of work, not in the context of my personal enjoyment or personal. Let me just divert a bit and talk about border management. I happened to meet a colleague and I said, hey, at the airport, and I say, hey, how far are you on border management issues after the agreement was reached in Cape Town on the matter? He said, no, we have not moved. And then I kept quiet. I couldn't speak on behalf of the Minister of Police. But what had happened? We had resolved a problem that had been in existence for a long time, since 2018, in terms of defining the roles of PMA on one hand, of subs on the other, such that those roles get operationalized. That is where we were when I went on. But what is happening today, I can't say. Okay. Has that been operationalized the same as this one?
I'm asking, Minister, in the context of you giving a directive. The directive is at EB4 on page 49 and 50.
Yes.
Of Exhibit Bundle 3. In that context, I'm asking you where you have said this task team must be disestablished immediately. This is on the 31st of December 2024. And the task team has not been disestablished.
And so what's your
Not
question?
only not immediately, it hasn't been disestablished.
So
and you want to tell me you're not aware of that?
And so what's your question?
My question was whether you're aware that the task, or rather put another way, I told you, do you know that the task team is still in existence? Or put another way, it hasn't been disestablished. And what is your reaction to that? Given that you had given a perfectly, according to you, lawful and constitutional directive that it must be disestablished.
No, I'll go back to my answer and I'll insist on it because evidence leader, you ask a question and I respond, but when you say I must choose between yes or no, it would be difficult for me because that's my terrain now to respond. And I respond in a manner that I believe in. So my response is this one, that I can't speak authoritatively and properly and precisely on whether the political killings task team is functional at the moment or not.
If you were returned into your position, reinstated or whatever the word or term is, if you were reappointed tomorrow as Minister of Police, you'll find that the task team is still in operation. You'll find Mkwenazi is still leading the team. You'll find Kumalo is still the project leader of the team. What are you going to do about it?
The reason why we're here is exactly to deal with that. I don't know how you are going to decide on it. The reason there is a commission is precisely to deal with those questions. I don't have the outcome. And therefore, I want rather to wait until the ad hoc committee has done their work and made their determination in terms of recommendations, as I understand, in terms of the terms of reference to the National Assembly on the subject. Similarly, I would wait until the Madlanga Commission completes its work and wait for the outcome. Now, whether the national political killings trust team will be there or not, I don't want to worry myself about that at this particular stage. For now, I want to worry about responding to your questions.
Yes, I'm also worried that I'm not getting a response to my question. Are you waiting for this honorable ad hoc committee and Parliament to make a decision?
Yeah, I'm saying to the best of my ability, I haven't put myself beyond these processes in whatever manner, and I want to refrain from that.
Let's look at your, does it or would it concern you that Brown Mkhotsi, whom I think you said you do know him.
What did I say?
Brown Mkhotsi.
What did I say?
I said, you must correct me that you do know him, or you know of him, Brown Mkhotsi. You're nodding yes?
Yes, I know him.
Yes, you know. Now,
yes, I know him.
Now, my question is, would it bother you that you issued your directive, it appears at 5:20 on the 31st of December 2024, is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Because that we picked up from, I think, the affidavit of Masimola. So would it concern or bother you that at 10:38, Mkhotsi sends a WhatsApp to Kat Matlala indicating, and I quote from the WhatsApp, the task team that came to your house and arrested you has been dissolved / disbanded, !
10:30 on the same day.
On the same day. On January 1st, Mkhotsi informed Matlala.
On January the 1st?
Yeah.
Okay.
That he would be meeting with you and Lieutenant General Sibiya. He says in a text message, "Good day, I've arranged a meeting for Sibiya and the minister. Must have a solution."
There are two questions there. The first one is, would it concern me that Mkhotsi seems to...
Shortly after you issued...
It would concern me.
It would?
It would concern me. Because I wouldn't know how that happened. But not only when my letter found its way into his hands on the date and time, it would have concerned me if my letter found its way into any other person's hand. I would similarly worry how it happened, and therefore the answer is straight. It would worry me. I would be very much concerned. Now, about this meeting, which is my second response, that he would arrange a meeting. It is him, apparently, who talks about that, not me. I never, and I want to repeat, I never spoke to Brown Mkhotsi in this period, particularly about the disbandment. How he got to know, how he got access to the letter, it is better explained by him. And that will be the only time that I would get to know how it happened. But about this meeting, there was no such meeting on my side. It was never communicated to me. I would know what the meeting would have been about. I never spoke to Sibiya about this meeting, that there was a meeting that was imminent between me and him, that I had sent somebody, and nobody ever raised the issue of a meeting between me and Sibiya after the letter of directives.
Did Did this letter only go to General Masemola? Did you send the letter, by the way, to General Masemola, or did you ask Kabindi to send it to Chief of Staff?
After leaks to, outside ourselves, I spoke to Chief of Staff. Where did you send the letter yourself? And he told me he sent the letter to General Masemola, to General Mosikiti, which I had directed him to do. But he, if I remember well, he also sent to PAs of the generals. I can't remember whether he also included General Sbia on that. He can clarify the matter himself, but what I underlined, I had said, send it to General Masemola, send it to General Mosikiti, because she's the one who is in the office. But it appears that he also sent to their PAs.
We know that General Masemola wouldn't have leaked the letter.
That?
We know that General Masemola wouldn't have leaked the letter to Mogotsi because he only heard about it through the media, I think on the 2nd of January.
In order to come to the bottom of this, it will have to be Mkhotsi himself to explain how he got hold of this, what he meant by this meeting and so on. But on my part, I wasn't expecting that he would get hold of my letter unless it had gone maybe to social media or leaked to social media, as it seems to have been the case. But it is him who must explain how he got hold. But it concerns me, and there was never any meeting that took place in any case as along those lines that you're talking about.
I'm not dealing with a meeting now, Minister.
Yes.
I'm dealing with the fact. It appears to be a fact that Mogotsi got hold of the letter and conveyed that to Matlala. So it wasn't you who sent it to him. It wasn't General Masemola. It could only have been either Nkabindi or one of the PAs or secretaries to one of the other generals that he copied the letter to.
Well, I really want to confine me not to any speculation, but if indeed Matlala received this letter from Mogotsi, it would mean it happened that way. And that concerns me as well, what it was sent for, because it was never meant for Matlala or any other person that he may have sent the letter to.
In fact, it was only meant for Masemola. It wasn't even meant for Nkabindi.
It was meant for Masemola, General Masemola, and General Mosikiti, in terms of my instruction.
That doesn't appear from the directive, Musikili. But you say your instructions.
Verbally, I told him send it because I knew that General Masemola is is going on leave, and he has appointed General Mosikiti to be in the office. So send the letter to General Mosikiti so that she is aware of this decision.
I think most people, most reasonable people would find it quite odd and curious, almost bizarre that you send a letter of this importance on New Year's Eve,
oh yes,
at 5:20, and address it to a national commissioner you know is on leave. He's taken a break until the 14th of January. I think you know that. And he's not even in his office. There's an acting national commissioner in the office. And your instructions in the letter, or your as you want to frame it, your directive is that this team be disestablished immediately. Clearly, physically, he can't do it because he's not in his office. He's on leave. So I want to put it to you that the issuing of this directive on New Year's Eve to a national commissioner who's on leave, it doesn't make sense. It's totally bizarre. And unless you can give us some other reason why you would have done so.
Yes. One, on the 31st of December for police, it's a working day. They work on the 31st. There's no law that...
Masemola not working. He's on leave.
Yes, he was on leave.
Yeah.
That is why the instruction said, send it to him. He is on leave. Send it to General Mosikidi, who is in office. That's not an offense. That's not breach of any law, because I wanted him to be aware. I was aware that he was on leave. And as far as I'm concerned, as a second reason, I sincerely and seriously wanted a situation where when we go back to work in January, we have a sense of 3 issues that have been lifted from the maze of other issues for attention, including the workshop that was spoken about and so on. I wanted us to find a way to focus on these 3 issues because I wanted a sense of achievement, something concrete that I could show to the Republic that, look, we have activated police properly and increased efficiencies on border management. 2, we want to make interventions on intelligence for reasons that I would state. And that I am making efforts within a short period when I'm there, well, short, but it was 6 months, that we want to optimize. We want to optimize in terms of resources. And this is one way. And when I indicated that let us deactivate the inspectorate, nobody asked me why it was 3 o'clock when I did it, or why it was 10 o'clock. We did it. We discussed, we took that decision at the time that we did. So to me, 31st was neither here nor there, and was not indicative of any sinister move or anything on my side. And the immediate that you spoke about in this context, to me, it was, as I explained, that this was not an immediate in the context of a drill. That is why there was an envisage, even written down, that will prepare an interim committee, an interim report, and it further said there will then be a MINESCO to discuss this matter.
But, Mr. Minister, with respect, that's not what the letter says. That there's some interim response that's required. Your letter states clearly that the team must be disestablished immediately. Now,
in the context that I've explained.
Unless there's some other meaning to this word, immediately.
Yes,
so
I've explained.
The English meaning of immediately means do it right now. Let's look at the letter.
Yeah, but let me explain this, because I'm here to respond.
Yes, but I would also want to contextualize what I'm asking you.
Thank you.
If I get an opportunity. You write to the National Commissioner, and you say, I trust this correspondent finds you well in the festive season. In the past few months, towards the end of this year, 2024, I have made observations on a number of important aspects of the SAPS and policing. For purposes of this letter, I'm focusing on 3 aspects that require very urgent attention to address some of the challenges at hand. Filling of posts in the intelligence division. All processes to fill vacant posts in the division should be altered immediately. And this also applies to posts currently vacant at head office. This should be until substantive discussions between the Minister and the National Commissioner takes place sometime early in the year. Ports of entry. It is common cause that all South African ports of entry are managed by Border Management Authority, with SAPS playing a vital role in the same space, which cannot be overemphasized. In line with this role, SAP personnel impact and efficiency should be reviewed from time to time. In terms of Section 2072, direct that you develop a new plan in this regard to the next ministry, to the next MANECO, Minister Management Executive Committee meeting later in January. And I'm skipping that part because that part the National Commissioner had no problem with. He says this is fine. It's to develop a plan, and you want to discuss it, have the plan ready. But then in relation to the political task team, you say in 2019, a directive was made to the National Commissioner of Police following the Morani Commission report, even though not flowing directly from such that an interministerial task team be established. Now we know that do you accept that now that you know the background, that's factually incorrect. It's not in 2019.
Yes, 2018. That was,
and it's also not following the Morani report, but it follows a political instruction from the president.
Yes.
Sorry. So that line, that's factually incorrect.
Yes, that's okay. Although I do say not directly from the Morani Commission. Because the Morani Commission, whatever the case, it was discussed even earlier. 2018 discussions, not the report itself. But I concede that point, that it was...
and then you go on to say the key mandate was to stop. So it's not quite clear. Are you referencing the Morani Commission report? Or the Interministerial Task Force that was established? The key mandate, you say, was to stop / investigate / resolve unresolved murders of politicians in the country, especially in KwaZulu-Natal. Then you say, my observation in this regard, as indicated above, is that further existence of this team is no longer required, nor is it adding any value to policing in South Africa. Now, if we pause there, if those are 2 reasons, it's no longer required, nor is it adding any value to policing in South Africa. That's not one of the reasons that you've given, that you spent quite a bit of time elaborating and expanding on. But these are the only 2 reasons that you give in this letter. It's no longer required because it's no longer, and it's also not adding any value to policing in South Africa. And then you say, I therefore direct that the political killing task team be disestablished immediately. Further, that a preliminary report in this regard be submitted to the Minister by the 20th of January. The final and closing report, not as you testified, Minister. It's not a provisional report. It's not a preliminary report. You say the final and closing report must be submitted to the Ministry Management Executive Committee meeting late January 2025, the date of which will be communicated as soon as possible. Now, I put it to you with respect, Minister, that if one reads this letter, it's very clear. You say, disestablish, discontinue this task team immediately. Do it now. And the final report I'm expecting from you at the end of January. But I want a preliminary report on the 20th of January and the final report at this MANECO Management Executive Committee meeting late January. The instructions are clear. It's not only clear, but it also seems to me, upon reflection, totally unreasonable that you give the National Commissioner, who's on leave, you said you knew he was on leave until the 14th of January, that you must give you a preliminary report by the 20th and a final report by the end of January. Your comments.
Thank you, Evidence Leader. Now, I have explained, as I will do again, the word immediately. Now, it didn't mean, Senior Counsel, that, for instance, anybody driving the car must then stop and leave the car and go home because the political killings task team has now been closed. It didn't mean that. It didn't mean that if you're pursuing any case, because closing a case is something else, and as you see, it's not there. It didn't mean that. It didn't mean that. Stop the car where you are. Drop the key, go home. Because
But Minister, why didn't you write? You said your decision, your directive. We'll still discuss it, although I'm not here to discuss the law or draw legal conclusions.
yes,
But clearly what you've read and what we've also received when we asked. You sent an information note to your legal team. We've been given the reasons that you think it's lawful and it's constitutional. So I don't want to debate that. But you say you held the honest belief that is in the best interest of the South African Police Service that this team be disestablished. You also said what you meant in this directive is not that, like a car, you must stop it immediately and get out of the car and leave it in the middle of the road. This is dangerous to do that. At least pull it off the road and put on your hazards or something and show, there's some car in the road and to avoid the car. Now, why did you not write this letter in that kind of language when you knew that the National Commissioner is on leave until the 14th? And say to him, for example, even though it's New Year's Eve, there are 3 matters that I would love to discuss with you urgently or very urgently upon your return. And these are the 3 matters. Or could you give me a report on these 3 matters or 1 matter by 20 January and by the end of January? But that's not the tone of the letter. I put it to you, Minister, that this letter and the tone of the letter, the language used in the letter, is in direct contrast to what you are telling us today, that you held this honest belief that this team must be closed and it must be disestablished, and that you had the power to do so. That doesn't come out of the letter when one reads the plain language of the letter and the record that we've heard in this inquiry, and which you, I think, fairly have acknowledged, that the STARS team, when they were in operation, they did a good job. They did what they were required to do.
So can I respond?
Yeah, yeah.
Senior Counsel, you are respectfully talking about various matters. Let me address the one that you addressed later of the tone. There's a different matter of the tone. I share your feeling that the tone was strong.
The tone was strong.
The tone was strong.
Or wrong?
Pardon?
You share my view that the tone was strong or wrong?
It does seem,
both.
It does seem what you're expressing to me is your personal concern that the tone was rather strong. I have no problem with that. I agree that it may have been a strong tone, to a point where what you are suggesting that it could have said this and this same thing, but on a softer tone. It could have happened. I have no problem with that, Senior Counsel.
In fact, may I add on to that?
But
I think
may I respond?
Yes, but
so that I don't forget.
Given a full opportunity, let me just add this. I think the tone is actually quite disturbing, especially when you talk about filling posts in the intelligence division, especially now that we know the issues, let's just call them neutrally issues with intelligence, and it's at the heart of this whole inquiry. And you say the filling of posts must be halted immediately, even vacant posts must be halted immediately. And I think you mentioned in your evidence that you, into the new year, that's why you wrote it on the 31st.
Yes,
into the new year, you wanted to give us, the public, some kind of confidence that these issues are being addressed.
The way the Senior Counsel is putting it, in terms, it's like there was a panel with people lined up for interviews, and then I say, stop. It wasn't like that, Senior Counsel. There was no lineup of people to be interviewed at night on the 31st. So it wasn't a question of saying stop. It didn't say on the date while you are driving on the car, stop the car and get out. What I'm saying, I share with you, which happens ordinarily in any conversation, anytime, in ordinary life, that you talk to somebody and then you see, somebody would say to you, hey, you were rather strong-toned. That happens in everyday life experience. It's an everyday life experience. I know you were soft and nice. It's part of life. Now here, I admit that the tone was strong. But I also similarly want to indicate to you that on the 21st of November, I had convened a meeting, National Commissioner, Deputy National Commissioners and Provincial Commissioners, and said, the murder rate in the country is concerning. So you call a meeting, you express that to your Minister of Police. You say, the escalation of drug distribution and the destruction that comes with that, I'm very concerned to a point where I don't sleep well. You go on to say there are too many firearms killing too many people, especially illegal firearms. You are deeply concerned and you are addressing this issue live. Now, on the 31st, you write a letter. You are stuck, completely focused on these matters that you believe strongly and honestly that are a concern to people out there. Even on the 31st, people are worried about issues on border management. Even on the 31st. Not all of us who have met and go and bribe on the 31st.
I'm not even sure that people want to be worried on the 31st of December with anything.
Yes, I'm now addressing, because in sharing your concern, I also want the House to be alive on what concerns people outside. I may have been concerned about National Commissioner being on leave. I may have been concerned about the tone. But in this instance, it doesn't mean that the tone was unlawful. It doesn't mean that the act itself was unlawful. I wrote these directives. I accept that I may have chosen a softer tone on this, but it was no insult to anyone. I knew National Commissioner is on leave, send the letter to acting National Commissioner.
When did you entertain or begin to entertain these thoughts that you need to address these issues, and that it sounds to me like this is in the public interest that these issues must be addressed? When did you start entertaining these thoughts? When did you start scribbling down? Because you say you drafted this letter yourself.
It's a cumulative issue that I'd been aware long before I became Minister of Police, that there is a grievance out there, outside ourselves as Cabinet, outside ourselves as MPs, about how porous our borders are. I even called a meeting for that. I even called the CEO of AXA to come and brief us about what's happening at OR Airport in terms of security, tight security at the airports. I may as well jump a little bit and say 2 weeks before General Mchunu went to a press briefing, I had called a meeting of the National Commissioner and Crime Intelligence to come and make a presentation to me about drugs in South Africa, about firearms in South Africa. I've got documents here. And that meeting, that presentation was done to me. It took more than 2 hours.
But you never discussed the political killings task team in that meeting.
But
you never discussed the political killings task team in that meeting.
In that meeting, no. We discussed drugs and firearms, which are killing people outside. So I had said in November, I am deeply worried about these 2 matters. Now, it's now 31st. And I then write the letter about issues that I believed were deeply concerning, not just to me. Now, I couldn't, in my choice, be worried more about that it was the 31st than the impact of these matters that I was talking about to our work. I couldn't.
I mean, you received...
Senior Counsel, may we take the hand of Honorable Malam?
Thanks, Chair. I'm not hearing, and I want to understand about this immediately. Is there immediately in the draft that you send to the Chief of Staff, who sent it to your advisor? If you're to give us the draft, not the final version of the letter, will we find a word which will now accept that it was strong? Will we find immediate in the draft letter?
Yes, immediately was written by me. Both in the draft that was checked by Advocate Piccoli and in the final draft. But as I've explained, in the context where you say, I need a preliminary report by a date after the 20th or something like that of January. So common sense tells you that the person who was writing this immediate was envisaging that the immediate doesn't mean stonewalling just there. You are driving the car, I've taken a decision. You are under arrest, get out. Because this car belongs to the task team. A decision has been taken. No, it merely was, the decision has been taken immediately, but the preliminary report in some future. But then the meeting of UNESCO in another future. Now, if you are in the executive and you are worried, you have to show your true colors and show seriousness on what you are conveying. I'm not saying be harsh. I'm not saying have a strong toe. But the issues that I had identified were of serious worry to me, even on the 31st. And I want to believe that I wasn't alone. I was with other people in South Africa. I was expressing their views. And I believe that it was lawful. And there was nothing wrong with it. But if you say the toe was strong, yes, the toe may have been strong.
Sorry, Honorable Chair.
But not as if there was something illegal about it, not as if there was something unlawful about it. Ukuzwelana nje ukuthi yayingabekeka ngeindlela incwadi singazwelana lapho sikhalisana ngiyavuma ukuthi hayi ngayibeka yathi ba strong kodwa hayi ukuthi
Extra strong.
not that it was unlawful, not that it was unconstitutional.
No, she's saying it's unlawful or
yes,
you know, whether you use strong language or light language, it's either lawful or unlawful.
Yes, thank you.
And I,
Honorable Chair,
how much
Honorable Malema been responded to?
I got a signal that he's satisfied. I want to check with you, how much more time do you still need?
Well,
I can allocate you 4 hours more.
I think we had earlier agreed, Honorable Chair, that we will stop at 6.
Okay.
And resume tomorrow morning.
So you want to stop?
If we could adjourn and resume, I think the minister.
Do you really want to stop now?
Honorable Chair?
Do you really want to stop now?
I've got a number of questions. But I think maybe since we set aside tomorrow, let's resume.
When I ask you this question and look at the honorable members. So, Senior Counsel, I think if you feel that you want us to stop, we have to stop. Unless if honorable members have a different view. Let me take Honorable Malema, Honorable Skosana, Honorable Nomval.
No, thanks, Chair. I was saying to the evidence leader that if he wants to go on, he must go on. Because tomorrow, in as much as we want to allocate him more time to ask questions, remember what you said, that we've got different commitments, some of us, and we may want, if he agrees that perhaps tomorrow we'll finish at a reasonable time so that we can get sufficient time to attend to other political matters. Because during the week, we allocate this time for this, and then during weekend, we serve our constituencies. So the other one must not suffer because of the other one. Thanks.
Honorable Nombalo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, Chair, in fact, I want to persuade the evidence leader, but obviously, depending on the strength of the witness, that we proceed so that tomorrow we finish early. Because many members, we don't want to experience what we experienced last week. I think only 4 of us were left here, 4 or 5. So we don't want to experience that. So if we can continue, even if we continue until 10 o'clock, for as long as he covers the large part of his examination, then we come and leave what is out, and finish what will be outstanding tomorrow, Chair. It's my persuasion to him, but obviously we must consider the feelings of the witness.
Honorable Skosana.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted the clarity from the minister, because earlier I don't understand when you said the National Co-Commissioner.
The question is not what we are dealing with now.
Oh, you are talking about time?
Yes.
For 10 o'clock is fine, Chair.
Okay, we will come to that later. Honorable Sangoes.
Chairperson, let's not act like disorganized people. This matter was canvassed in terms of time. It was agreed that today and tomorrow the evidence leader would lead testimony of Minister Mchunu. There was an agreement that the stop time today would be 6 o'clock, and then tomorrow it would be 2 o'clock, which I believe provides sufficient time from the evidence leader to be able to raise any other questions that he wants to raise. Now, if we have not managed to organize ourselves and our programs, it can't be a problem of the ad hoc committee as a whole. And I think that those decisions that we had made in terms of how we're going to manage these proceedings, we should retain, Chairperson, please. Thank you.
Tomorrow, if we start at 7. No, listen, honorable members, I'm telling you what is happening tomorrow. Okay. If we start at 11 tomorrow, we are finishing at 3. If we start at 10, we finish at 2. If we start at 9, we finish at 1. If we start at 8, we finish at 12. If we start at 7, we finish at 11. So I want us to start at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And then we will be done by 2 o'clock. So I think the senior counsel, in the manner that he has arranged his work today, was to be done at this time at 6 o'clock. So you can see the documents are voluminous, and we may need to give them time to rest, including I can see the minister is still raring to go, but we will have to end it here. Honorable Skosana, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted a clarity from the minister, because I could not really comprehend what he was saying when he said the National Commissioner, when they were talking about Molefe, that he was briefed by the Commissioner regarding Brian Molefe, which I think is wrong, including when he said it's a relative of Brian Molefe who was arrested, because Brian is not related to that Molefe we are talking about. This reflective of the quality.
Yeah, no, let's not debate.
No, I'm not debating, Chair. Can you give me a chance, Chair, please?
Let's ask the question.
Yes, I'm not finished with the question. Because these are the issues where misinformation and ineptitude as well, which makes people to be tainted. So I wanted clarity on that. Why the National Commissioner was saying the guy who's arrested is related to Brian Molefe, because he knows Honorable Molefe, as he said himself. Thank you, Chair.
Point of
Chair,
order.
can you please protect the witness? This is not a clarity-seeking question. Today, we're still on clarity-seeking questions, and I want to advise Honorable Skosan that the gentleman sitting in front of him is Minister Mchunu. So if he wants to know why the general said that, he may want to ask General Masemolo. But the point that I'm making is that this is not a clarity-seeking question, Chair. It's a debate. Thank you.
Yeah, no, the question is not. It's not a clarity-seeking question. unless you have a clarity-seeking question that you want to restate, I give you the opportunity to restate it.
Let me repeat again. I'm not going to change because Honorable Sangoni said so. I'm not going to do that. The minister can answer for himself. He doesn't need any assistance. This issue of closing ranks, we know that he's a minister, and I just wanted to find out because I could not hear him well. Let the minister answer for himself, please.
Honorable Skosan, it's not what Honorable Sangoni is saying. It's what the chairperson is saying. The chairperson is giving you an opportunity to put a question for clarity to the witness. What is the question for clarity?
The clarity is simple. I said to the minister, he must just explain, clarify for us, why Brian Molefe? Because he's a Molefe? It was that the national because the national commissioner never said so to us. It's the minister who said so. So when someone said I must ask the national commissioner, it's unfair, Chair.
Why Mr. Brown Molefe? What is the question about Mr. Brown Molefe?
But Chair,
I've been repeating myself.
Let's allow the honourable member to put a question for clarity to the witness.
Chair, Minister, can you please clarify the issue of Brian Molefe? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I assume that it was just an error when the National Commissioner mentioned, and then when the arrest, got into news, it was another. And he had not struggled when I called to say, yeah, but it seems, he says, no, it's correct, that this information is correct. So he may have just made an ordinary error, not because he meant anything.
I'm waiting for you, Chair.
I'm looking at yourselves. Your hands are
no, Chair.
There is no intention to speak from your mouth.
Let me tell you what.
It's like you are flamos.
Listen to me, Chair. What I'm going to do next time, I'm just going to speak. Because for me, I'm following you. When you give me an opportunity, I will speak.
He has responded. You seem paralyzed. Because
no, I'm not paralyzed.
You're raising a hand.
No, I'm not paralyzed. I'm not easily intimidated by anybody, by the chair himself and the minister himself. Not intimidated at all.
Honorable Skosana, is your hand up?
No, my hand was not up. Okay. I was waiting for you to ask me whether I'm satisfied or not.
Must I allow you to speak if your hand is not up?
No. As I'm saying to you, it's you who's chairing, it's not me.
Okay.
So you must ask me like you ask anyone. Are you satisfied?
Honorable member, are you satisfied with the response?
Yeah, I'm happy because the minister say it's a mistake, it's an error.
Okay.
Thank you.
Honorable Domval. I'm Honorable Shongwe. I'm sorry.
Makatali, Chair. Thank you, Chair. No, Chair, silungis. On a serious note, Chair. Uminister ngicabanga ukuthi uphazamisekile ekhuluma. Kwavela ngathi uthi uGeneral umtshela ukuthi kuzoboshwa uBrian Molefe osePhalamende. Now when you listen to that video again, akayilungisanga even ecede ends up by saying no, it was not him, it was his brother. So it looks as if that person who was being arrested is not Brian Molefe, but it was the brother. So we wanted clarity on that ukuthi Brian Molefe akangeni indawo lapha akazenza lutho lapha. So usecacisile nje siyabonga kakhulu.
You are saying that it's a matter which must be put on record that the person is not Honorable Brian Molefe.
And akahlobani naye futhi and akusu brother wakhe.
You heard that, Minister?
Yes, very clearly.
Can we put it on record?
Yes, I'm saying that we had a conversation with the National Commissioner, and I picked up that he's speaking about Brian Molefe. But when the arrest got into news, it appeared that it was another Molefe, and I phoned to say, I thought you were saying, but I see something else. And then National Commission said, yeah, no, it was an error. So I assumed that was the end of the story.
Who shot the brother part, Minister? Ngena allowed and not his brother.
Not whose brother.
You end up when you finish your statement, you said, no, it was not him. It was his brother or relative or something like that.
Yes.
So you want clarity, it was not. I correlated to that person, Oboshiu.
No, we didn't go that far.
Okay.
You went that far.
Yeah, no, we have come to...
It was not Honorable Brian Mlife. It was another Mlife. Yeah.
Okay, honorable members, may I request that you stop speaking so that the meeting can end. Thank you so much. We have come to the end of today's proceedings. 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Thank you.